Hi, garden friends. Welcome to the channel. I'm Era, and this is Gardening on Purpose. I garden in Georgia, Zone 8A. For today's video, I'll be planting the first set of plants in my new open area after I cut those oak trees down. Let's get started. All right, guys. So I will be putting in Korean boxwoods in this area here. You see where I have all those bricks or the retaining wall blocks that I have that I bought? I'm going to be putting the boxwood in front of every other one. So in front of this one, but not in front of that. In front of this, but not in front of that. And I'm going to keep it going all the way up. And if I counted it right, it should be 16 of them, right? Now I have different sizes, so I'm going to be starting with the smaller one first down here, and then make my way up to the bigger one all the way up. Now this is an evergreen. It doesn't flower, obviously, but boxwoods definitely create a structure in the garden, and I really, really like them. Now these wintergreen boxwoods, these grow up to 3 to 4 feet tall. And because they're fast growing, I can accomplish that in 2 years, especially for the smaller ones, right? But that's fine. This is just to create the structure. Now I have these in containers because they were in a container for whatever reason. Either I had them lined somewhere in the side of the house, or I dug them up when the guys came to cut the trees down. But these are in containers. I do have some in the ground. Here are 3 right here. I'm going to dig those up and keep it going on the other side. And then I have 3 more. Now, these are the more mature ones. They're not at their peak height yet, but these are the ones that have had the longest. And these are pretty much 2.5 feet tall. So they have probably another foot and a half in the next year for them to get where they need to be. But this is what I'm hoping that will be in front of that retaining wall structure that I have. So there's one right here. There's another one right here. And then there's another one right here. I wish I didn't have to dig them up, but I really need them where they need to go. So if you've been following me for a while, you know that I have clay here in Georgia, and different parts of the yard have different levels of clay. Some parts of the yard, the clay is really hard and brick-like and red. Some parts of the clay is more orange and softer. Some parts of the clay is actually more gray looking, you know. But this part here, I'm not even worried about the clay, and I never am, because I have the pine bark soil conditioner. This has been a miracle worker for me, guys. I add this to every hole I dig. It's pretty much pine bark chipped up, and you add it to the soil, and I add it 50-50, but it all depends on how bad the clay is. Sometimes I don't add as much pine bark because the clay is not as bad, but down here I'm going to add a little bit more, because not only does this guy here add with, help with recompacting, it actually helps with drainage. And of course, we know that one of clay's issue is that it does not drain very fast. So plants stay a little bit wetter than they need to. So this is why I add the pine bark soil conditioner into my soil. I do not add anything else other than fertilizer twice a year. I do not put anything else in these holes in Georgia in this clay. But in any case, I'm not even worried about the clay. It is the roots from that oak tree that have been hitting, but it's quite fine. Let's just get planting. So this is what the bottom of one of the holes that I've dug looks like, and I threw some pine bark in there already, but I just want to move the pine bark out the way so you can see what my clay looks like. And because it is wet, it doesn't look that bad, because, it's winter, we're getting a little bit more rain, the clay is a little bit softer. But in the drier months, such as June, July, August, and September, or the hotter months, I should say, the clay will get hard again, really, really hard and really hard to dig in. But for now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some pine bark. And this is what the pine bark looks like close up. It's pretty much the bark of the pine tree that they've shredded up over and over and over again to add as a soil conditioner to your soil, right? And I'm just going to pour, and I'm going to just make a judgment on here. I'm not going to do any extra measurements or anything. And then when I add that, I kind of put it around in the ground, mix it up with the native soil. You definitely don't want to take, well, not you, but me personally, I don't take my native soil out and just put other soil in there, because you want the plant to know where it's going to live for the next couple of years, and you wanted to make it a seamless transition from the pot that you bought it in into where it's going to live. And we have clay in Georgia. There's no getting around it. So I'm not trying to get rid of my native soil or anything or take it out. I am just trying to enhance it, right? So I'm adding a little bit more. This is the boxwood that's going into this particular hole, and it was in the ground. I took it out to get the guys, easy access to take that pine tree out. I mean, not that pine tree, that oak tree out. And that's why it has dirt on it and everything. So I'm just going to grab it. This is what the root looks like. And I'm going to put it in the ground. Remember, I also plant my plants above the soil grade. Again, because it's clay, clay stays wetter longer. You don't want your plant to drown, especially in the winter. So I make sure my plants are at least an inch above the soil grade. Now I'm trying to find my soil grade here, which is where the natural soil starts. Here it is right there. So this should not be below this grade, right? This should not be below that because it's just not good for the plants. I mean, for any plant, really. Especially if you have clay and it's the winter and it's a plant that doesn't like water, it will drown if it's too deep. And plants do sink. So again, I try to put mine up at least an inch to 2 inches above the soil grade. So when it does sink, it's still above the soil grade, right? So this is what it's looking like right now, right? And I'm just going to pour back in, go around and put some pine bark around the root ball, right? And then I put back that native soil so it'll know this is where you're going to live, buddy. This is where you're going to live. So this is that native soil right here. And I'm just going to pour it back around. Now it's really chunky here, but it's easy to break up. And then I just put it around again. And then once I go all the way around the soil, the whole point of this is that when I'm done planting this thing, I need to still be able to see this top of this plant. I never want to cover the top of my plant. Not in Georgia, not in clay, not in the winter, or ever, really. Right? So once I put all that soil in, right, and I'm going to use some of the soil that it was in the container in, and I just go around and pour it in, right? And then once I'm done doing that, again, I'm always seeing right here, right? Because remember, I have to push the mulch back too. So once I push the mulch back, then we'll be covered, right? And that's what this is. So I'm going to push this here. And once I push that back there, you still are able to see this, right? So that's how I plant all of my plants, guys. And that has really served me well here in my garden. I feel very accomplished, guys. I got in pretty much all but one of the boxwoods into the ground. So this is what they're all looking like. I still haven't cleaned up myself yet, and I haven't watered them in yet, but I just feel great that I got this part of the project done. And as I zoom in, you're going to see, like I mentioned earlier, this is what they look like. And the root ball is above the soil grade. And as I come in closer and I go up, you can see they're all in. So happy. Now you're going to see an empty one right here. And that's because I was actually going to dig up the three that I mentioned earlier. Remember I mentioned I was going to dig up these guys here? I just decided not to because they're so established already, and to move them would be a shame because they're definitely going to react, right? So what I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to buy an extra one. I'm going to run to Lowe's tomorrow and see if I can find a small version of this boxwood and put it here. Now, these two were in a bigger white container. They do look a little, they're not as green as the others, and I think they probably weren't happy in that container. I'm going to cut off probably down to here. I'm going to cut this to see if it makes a difference, but it is not as green as the others. I put it in the ground, hoping to save it. I don't know, it's probably lacking something why it's not as green as the others, but that's just fine. Here's a spot to fill in for one last one, and then let me back up so you can see what it's going to look like once I finish them all, guys. Really nice to see that back part of this bed is going to be the boxwood, and it's always going to be constant, looking really great. I'm happy the way it looks. So like I said earlier, all I have to do is water in. Let me know what you guys think. And if you use boxwoods in your garden, what type of boxwoods work great for you and how they've been doing so far. Please like, please share, and please subscribe. Remember to hit that notification bell, guys, so you can be alerted whenever I put out a new video. Thanks and have a great day. Bye.